You are chair for just a few more hours. What's next for you after that?
So still going to have to figure out what the next adventure is. I haven't made any plans yet, but I'm hopeful that it will be just as intellectually stimulating and rewarding as the past 4 years have been. It's been the ride of a lifetime in this position, and I can't wait to see what comes next.
Well, certainly the new FCC or the reconstituted FCC will be taking on a full plate of issues, not the least of which is Section 230. You know, what do you believe are the big issues that are going to define the next tenure of the FCC?
Well, I think the current FCC has laid a very strong foundation on some of the core issues that the next agency will have to tackle. For example, our work to close the digital divide, getting millions more Americans access to the internet. Our work to promote American leadership in 5G, including finishing last week the largest spectrum auction in American history of the C-band. Working to protect consumers on everything from robocalls to establishing 988 as a 3-digit number for suicide prevention and mental health. And also just continuing to transform how the agency operates. You know, we've made it more transparent, more bipartisan than ever before, and I'm hopeful that the next FCC will as well. And as I told our team, I hope for their success. I'll be rooting for them from afar because the next FCC success will be America's success, and we're all in it together.
Now, you decided a couple of weeks ago not to move forward with a proposal to limit the liability shield and to take any action on Section 230 as requested by President Trump, and it's been quite an eventful couple of weeks. What is your reaction to Facebook suspending the president indefinitely, to Twitter banning the president permanently?
Well, I think it highlights two different issues. The first is transparency. Back in 2017, I made a speech in which I pointed out that a lot of these social media platforms don't have any transparency into how they make decisions about what consumers see or can say, who makes those decisions, et cetera. Those concerns have only been accentuated in recent weeks. The second thing is consistency. Obviously, if people are going to make these decisions who operate these social media platforms, why do they make some decisions and not apply that principle elsewhere? So I pointed out, for example, last summer, why does the supreme leader of Iran get to tweet out threats to the Israeli state, among others, and not face any consequences in terms of violations of terms of service? That's something that the next FCC, the next Congress, will be thinking about.
That said, you've said there is bipartisan consensus for some change to Section 230. What changes do you suggest?
Well, obviously, President-elect Biden has campaigned repeatedly on the full repeal of Section 230, but I think many in Congress are looking for more tailored revisions. One of the things that we were looking at, for example, at the FCC was what is the proper scope of the immunity provision within Section 230? That's something that the next Congress may take a look at. They may take a look at other parts of Section 230 as well, but I think it's going to be important for them to, of course, go through the legislative process, hold hearings, call in witnesses, engage in deliberations to figure out whether and to what extent this provision should be amended. There are obviously a lot of puts and takes, and there could be some unintended consequences, so they're going to need to think through very carefully what those changes should be.
So how far do you think the government should go when it comes to regulating private companies? Even though these companies have huge global influence and impact, they are still private companies.
Well, I've consistently said that under current law, the FCC does not have the authority to directly regulate how these social media companies operate. But what I have said is that everybody in the internet economy, it could be an internet service provider, or it could be a tech giant like Twitter or Facebook, everybody should operate under a consistent level of regulation in terms of transparency and things like that. And I think if we had those basic rules of the road, a lot of the sting and uncertainty in this debate could simply vanish because you would have everyone would know where things stood. But as things stand now, again, we don't have the transparency that a lot of consumers expect, and that's generating a lot of questions about how these decisions are being made here and around the world, by the way.
Now, your decision on net neutrality, as we've talked about in the past, was probably the most controversial and maybe challenging decision that you ever made. And a new administration, a new FCC might try to undo that. What are your biggest concerns when it comes to net neutrality in particular?
Well, I think the last 3 years have demonstrated beyond a doubt that our decision was the correct one. You know, when we made it, there were all kinds of hyperbolic predictions from politicians, from special interest groups, from tech companies. And this is the end of the internet as we know it. You're going to get the internet one word at a time. You'll have to pay $15 per month just to be able to tweet. But now, fast forward over 3 years, the internet is twice as fast as it was in terms of fixed broadband speeds 3 years ago. Same with the wireless speeds, they've gone up dramatically. a huge increase in capital expenditures to build these internet infrastructures, and millions more Americans have access to the internet than ever before. And so I think their decision was the correct one. And moreover, the entire debate about net neutrality has now been obscured, I think, by the debate over the tech giants. Some of the advocates who are strongly opposed to our decision because they fear that it would allow network operators to censor speech they don't like are now turning around and demanding that internet companies censor speech that they don't like. So that intellectual incoherence that we see among certain advocates for net neutrality, I think is going to have to be reconciled. And to me, it should be reconciled by Congress putting on the page the basic principles of an open internet that we all agree on. No blocking, no throttling, no anti-competitive conduct, transparency. I've just described in 10 seconds a bill that should pass 99-1 in the Senate, but we'll see how things shake out.
So Color of Change is urging President-elect Biden to choose Jeffrey Starks, Black Democratic member of the FCC, to be your successor. Any insight on who your next successor should be, and do you have any advice for that person?
Well, I don't know who it will be. I, of course, have tremendous esteem for Commissioner Starks. And not only have we worked well together, establishing things like the Early Career Staff Diversity Initiative to get more underrepresented communities into the FCC's workforce, but also he hails from my home state of Kansas and he's a Chiefs fan. So I think there would be some nice continuity there. But more seriously, whoever the next chair is, the advice I would give him or her is to chart the course that you want to chart in terms of the public interest, and then work very hard to leverage the FCC's best asset, which is its staff, to achieve that. As I said, I stand willing and able to help in any way I can. I'll be rooting for their success. I truly believe that these issues are nonpartisan in nature. And it's a challenging job, no doubt about it, but there are also tremendous rewards too, in terms of delivering for the American people. And I hope that the next chair will be able to do that.